Friends, this is a real for real scarf. And this is Bob Foley. And Bob collects scarves. Is that accurate?
Yes.
I know you collect a lot of stuff, but scarves happens to be one of them.
Yes, that's kind of one of my favorites.
And you're somewhat of a scarf expert. Now, I know you've got another guy that I'm going to talk to that you feel like is more of an expert than you.
I've learned a lot of what I know from him.
Okay, that's fair.
And from my experiences.
So we're going to talk about scarves today, friends. We're going to also talk about preserving scarves. So one thing that I'm going to note right here on this particular scarf is this is double spaced, and this is rough. When I touch it with my finger, it is raised. It is screen printed, but it's actually, it almost feels like it's embroidered, but it's not. And I was told that Elvis did not like these scarves, so they didn't last very long. So this would be a very rare scarf.
It would be.
Accurate?
Two things that make it rare is one, the raised lettering. He didn't like it. It was rough on his face, and the double spacing is probably a printing error, so that would make it more rare. The location of the printing is accurate, but the rest of it.
And you mentioned that if you have a scarf that has the Elvis Presley here and on the far corner, then it
Is most likely a Japanese manufactured scarf after Elvis died.
which would be what we would consider a fake.
A fake, yes, or a knockoff.
A knockoff,
Yep.
okay. And of course, I have a scarf, but I bought it after '77 from somewhere, from a shop or whatever. Maybe even from Graceland, so that would be a fake. That's not the real
Correct, and a lot of them that are made post-death by Elvis Presley Enterprises or for them, they'll say sincerely Elvis Presley.
Aha, mine says sincerely Elvis Presley.
You can almost bet, unless it's a photo. There's some of the photos, but if it's a scarf, but photos, some of them would say sincerely Elvis Presley. But if it's a scarf, any garment made that says sincerely Elvis Presley is not an authentic, it was not around, it's all post-death, and it was made after he passed away.
Okay, that's very, very good to know. That's great knowledge. That's things we need to know. So another thing is this particular scarf, friends, is his scarf, but it was returned to him in a way that he would not keep this scarf. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that.
This particular scarf, so if you look here, it came back to me in a poly bag. Most of the time you'll see it's the 1 foot by 1 foot freezer bag with a Ziploc on the top. This just happens to be a folded bag because there is some other memorabilia with the scarf. And what people do is they fold them about 9 to 10 inches by 9 to 10 inches, and they put them in the freezer bag, zip it closed, thinking this is a great way to store this. It's not going to get wet, it's not going to get dirty or soiled. Unfortunately, what it does, it puts these horrible creases in it that are different than how this scarf was originally folded for when Elvis was going to throw it. The other thing it does, the poly bag is a petroleum-based item. Unless you buy a special bag that's made for storing archival material, all bags that are sold, and I mean all bags that are sold retail with the Ziploc, are petroleum-based. And so what happens is you put a scarf, especially if a scarf has some polyester in it, because that has a little bit of poly base to it then too. But you put the scarf in here, you're now trapping what moisture was there in it, because there's a certain amount of moisture in the garment and the air around it when you close it, because it's not vacuum packed. The other thing you're going to notice, that when you fold it that tight, you're going to put in there. And then you store it. The temperature is going to rise and fall, and what will happen is the molecular structure changes, and just over time, even if you climate control it, this bag, like anything on this earth, is going to slowly decay, inside and out. The outside, the gases will just dissipate away, but on the inside, they have nowhere to go except into this garment. So if you look closely, if you can ignore the creases, you will see almost violet stripes right in the creases here. There's one thing they call that. They refer to that as fume fading. So what has happened is the first thing that these gases from the bag attack is the dye. And depending on the color of the garment. So I've had people, I've had a white scarf in a bag for 40 years, not a problem, it's white. So it's probably not pronounced. Purple, if you noticed at the auction today, there was a purple scarf in the auction. And you can see how it, in a lot of areas, it went from that rich, deep purple to almost violet all over the place. And what you'll find is a lot of times if they fold it with this one square facing up in the bag when it's all done, you'll open up the scarf. This whole thing here is violet and the rest of it's a rich purple other than these stripes. That's all from fume fading, has nothing to do with age. If this scarf is stored properly from the time it was first obtained, you're not gonna have a problem. And
But the vast majority of them are not. And the thing about plastic is that a lot of people don't know is it is designed to go away.
Yes.
Plastic by nature has different, what we call half-life or whatever.
To break down.
So they're actually designed to break down. So as they're breaking down, it is destroying the scarf.
Correct.
So how would you recommend, what is the right way?
so if you wanna do it economically, some people think they need to go buy these archival, some people are buying archival bags and then leaving these creases in there. But if you wanna solve all the issues and you're gonna store it, you're not gonna display it, what you're gonna want is just simply take a tube from wrapping paper, Christmas wrapping paper. Whether it be cheesecloth or take an old bed sheet and cut it 6 inches by 3 feet long and roll that over the tube first. And then keep in mind, don't tape that on there or glue it on there, because sooner or later, those chemicals are gonna do the same thing. It's almost as bad as putting Elvis Presley's clothes on a plastic mannequin. It's like putting them in the bag. So what ends up happening is then once you roll that on there, you've taken care of your creases, then you take another piece of bed sheet and roll it over that. And again, don't tape it. Don't slide it in a plastic bag then. Don't even wrap it in paper. This way air molecules can, and then about every year or so, take the thing out, take it out, shake it off, because you're gonna get little dust molecules in there no matter what you do. And if it's not vacuum packed or sealed, it's gonna do that. And then if you're gonna display it, that's a whole different situation there.
Okay, so tell us about that. What would you recommend for
What
display?
I do is, there's 2 ways people display scarves. If you have one like this and you don't want to try, because you don't iron them. Whatever you do, don't ever try to put an iron on this, even if you put the towel over it. If you're going to try to get these wrinkles out, you go to a professional company that does garment restoration, not a dry cleaners, because they're just going to put it on a press. You're going to go, but 2 ways to display them. Some people fold them into this square, so you see this beautiful signature, 9 by 9, and most of them use, the 18 by 20, 2-inch deep, what do they call them, shadow boxes?
Shadow box display case. You could buy them at Hobby Lobby.
Yep,
that kind of
Hobby
stuff.
Lobby, and different stores like that, and you can buy them for $20. And then what I do is, and so that's the one way to, and so what you can do is, you have to find a way to get this scarf to stay square. This is why I don't do it this way. Square and because poking pins through it isn't a good thing. And unless you can get some of them archival corners, and then you can hold the 4 corners, but you still got some problems with it wanting to fall out.
And also, now we're talking about trying to do it without folding, but what about the UV and that kind of stuff in
Most
that
of these
kind
boxes
case?
will say that they're UV safe.
So it's got UV glass in it.
But even with UV glass, the biggest thing, they hate sunlight is the #1 worst thing. And so if you think back in the day, we used to call windows piano windows in a house that were up above, because people had pianos and that sunlight coming in a window hitting a piano would affect the soundboard on them. I learned that growing up because my mother was a piano player, and so she went to go see Elvis. So I learned about piano windows, because then when it's sunny, then the sun doesn't come into that area. So sun is the worst, then incandescent light bulbs are the second worst, followed by fluorescent, and then of course the new LEDs are the best. And what I do is, a lot of times I don't fully display it. So for example, if I'm not going to be home for a week or nobody's going to come over, I don't need to look at my garment every day. Like I have a red jacket. I have one of the tour jackets, and it's bright red. Red fades the fastest no matter what you do if light hits it. So I have a silk, almost like this material, the size of my case, with 3 little Velcro things on the top of this piece of material and Velcro on the top of it, and I just take it, stick it over the top, and it drapes down the front. My family all knows what's in the case, and if I want to look at it, I'll pip it, and then the light isn't hitting it. And then every year again, dust is still getting into that case, even though you don't think so. It does. How many times have you opened a drawer and went, how'd it get dusty in here? I never opened it. It gets around, air moves around. And so how I recommend the best way to display is how Elvis wore the scarf. He wore it around his neck and it hung down and he threw it that way. So what I do is I take that case and then I take a little dowel rod, almost the distance inside, 2 inches, cut it with a saw, spray paint it, and you can use a standard paint. Once that paint's dry and fully cured, it's harmless. You could even chew on it, it won't hurt you. Okay. So just your Krylon, and then I drill a tiny hole in the back of the case after I found what suits me for the distance. So I have 2 pegs. So if this was the case right here, I'll move bag. I'll put a peg here, like from here to here. I'll put a peg here and a peg here, and then it's sticking out. And then I drape the scarf across the peg, and then I can put my ticket stub, couple pictures here, or some other things. If I got some buttons at the show, I can put them in there. And then when I put the back on with the glass, when I stand it up, those pegs come almost all the way to the glass, so it doesn't fall out of place. Then after a year, 6 months, 3 months, you can open the case up, you can rehang, and you always hang it so that at least the signature will show, assuming not all scarves had signatures. Some of the older ones didn't, but if you have the facsimile signature, then you want that exposed. But you can then shake the garment out, rehang it, so it, you know, that's why I like it better than the folding. I have seen some pretty displays with the folded scarf. You get a menu in there if it's from Vegas and some other things, and it looks attractive. So I'm not saying it's a bad way to have it. It just, my way, you have the least amount of potential risk.
Okay. So what I'm gathering from this information is allowing them to air out, not sealing them up, is better than any other way. Not actually sealing them where air can't move around them. It's better to have air movement around them.
Right, absolutely. They'll last for years, and as long as you keep them clean and, you know, smoke-free. I mean, if you smoke in your home, you can just know that you're going to, even if you seal that case, you're going to damage this.
That's right. So another telltale, you mentioned a couple of telltales about how to tell a fake one. Do you have any other things? I know we mentioned the double stamp. There is this version that's rough and raised with the double space in it. There's also a version with a single space that is more screen print type. Right. And you also mentioned the position of it. This is turned this way. There's some that are turned that way.
Right. You can, one of the things that kind of is a telltale giveaway, when they first started buying the scarves, and without going into the whole history of how Colonel Parker made the deal for the scarves made in Korea, when they first did this and started getting this 34 by 34 approximate, remember, once you start production on these things at $1 a scarf, they're not overly fussy. So sometimes the signature may inadvertently be stamped this way. That doesn't mean it isn't a real scarf. It is. And it's probably even a little rare because there isn't that many made that way. But the other thing you may notice, and if you look online and watch, some of the first ones, they did sometimes go on the corner, but for the most part, what happened was when they first imported these scarves and they came to customs, U.S. Customs would not let them come into the country because they didn't have origin. And in this country, all the tags on your T-shirts and everything have to say made in India, made in Korea, made in China. These didn't say made in anywhere because Elvis said, I don't want made in China or made in anything on my scarves. Well, the customs said they're not coming in then. So they ran out and went, oh, here's what we'll do. They go to a printing company and they print a whole bunch of little stickers, about half an inch by an inch or right around there. It said made in Korea. And they stuck them babies, for the most part, right below the signature. Okay. And then they said, oh, okay, they can come in now. And then they get them to Graceland. Okay, take the damn stickers back off because we don't want them on there when Elvis throws them. There are photos out there with Elvis. People say there isn't, but there are photos out there. And I think you just saw yesterday at John Daly's business, he actually has a scarf that still has the little sticker down here, made in Korea.
Which makes it very, very rare.
Extremely rare.
Right.
I'd like to own that.
You mentioned that even the glue from
right.
the sticker still being on there is very, very
right.
rare.
And so it helps you authenticate whether or not the scarf is real. It doesn't tell you whether or not if it came from the stage or not, but it tells you that it's a real scarf. And in my opinion, whether they bought it for $5 from a concession stand or Elvis threw it, it's still a part of history and it's a part of the show. It's like a ticket stub, original photos, the buttons they sold, the posters. It's still an authentic, genuine item. Whether or not Elvis, whether what they term used, stage used or not, is what matters. So yes, you will see that little sticker of the glue, and I would highly recommend don't try to get that glue sticker off and try to get it gone. Just leave it there.
Embrace it. It's
yeah,
actually
exactly.
an authentication.
I actually personally, I still have the records. I sold the scarf, and the person was very, very uneasy whether or not I just went to Minnesota Fabrics, which is a company in our state, and just bought some material and had my sister sew it up. Said, "Here, I got an Elvis scarf." And it's a transition scarf. It doesn't have a signature, and they'd sell it for $500 to $1,000. I was able to have the signature on it, and he sees the glue, and so that tells you it might even be one of the first 50,000 that Colonel Parker ordered, because the first 50,000 had the sticker right here.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of them out there.
Okay, are there any, and we'll just jump around with a couple of different, I'll ask you a couple of questions. Are there any colors that are not authentic that are out there in the world? If you could just say they did not have any in this color, although there's some out there that people are passing off. Is there anything like that?
Well, there's one design that came to mind right away, because to make it simple, the concession stands only sold, because every show sold scarves. They only sold white and a blue similar to this teal. So your camera might even make this look like a blue. It's hard to try to get the teal out of it. And this is a curved corner scarf.
Okay.
So when these started in about 74, it's more rare, and then they did go back to square corners. So years ago, I used to think that the curved corner scarf was a re-sewn square corner scarf, but it wasn't. It was a rare scarf. So it's that learning curve.
Where were these made at, do you know? Because there was a
Korea.
point.
But they did change.
Opportunity Village in Las Vegas.
Right, I was
There
gonna
a
say.
period of time.
That they did go, right, that I was gonna say, out in Las Vegas, they made some out there. And I didn't.
Is that the curved corner as opposed
I
to the
don't
square?
know.
It's possible.
It's possible, and Mike would certainly know more. And if people say, I got a curved corner scarf in 76, and then I got a square corner scarf, and there was times where Charlie would have all these scarves on the piano, and then at the end of the show, whatever's left went back in the trunk, and then when they came out for the next tour, next show on the piano again, and they threw more scarves on top, you might have a scarf that he threw a yellow one in Huntsville, Alabama, that sold here a couple auctions ago that everybody wanted in 75, and all of a sudden, well, I got one of them in 74, or I got one in 76. That scarf could have sat in that trunk for a year, 3 tours, and there was some strays. So even scarves, someone mentioned in that group when we were talking down there, that he got a red scarf without a signature in 75 or 76, I think he was saying. He was throwing red scarves rarely in 71. So when it might have been a transitional scarf, I don't know, because we didn't see the scarf, but there was a scarf without a signature thrown in his later couple years, which is uncommon, but there was a lot of scarves that they could grab out.
And that non-signature could have been Opportunity Village even.
Certainly.
They may not have had a way of doing this.
They may not have printed them and said,
something of that
and they're
nature.
running out and the tour is starting, or he's going to Vegas.